Like sometime I be sitting there saying to God, like, why do you do me like this, man? Like, why do you always do me like this? Like, I be drop dead in the middle of doing something, right? And then I just start hearing, so I just be like, yeah, wait, that make perfect sense. And then next thing I know, he's like, write this down. So I take that phone and start clicking and typing. I'm like, man, hold on, wait a minute. That sounds so good, man. But then I had to sit back and think, right? Man, why do we treat this word like it's so much less important than our careers in college? You know, you go to college and you sit in some of them classrooms and everybody's sitting there writing it down, taking notes, using a voice recorder to make sure that they captured exactly what was being said. But then God would give us revelation on something and we just let it sit there in our heads. And for real, when God is speaking, I think that's so much more important than when anybody speaks. You know, I was taught in a business class that it is a sign of respect to take notes when the teacher is actually telling you something. Because you literally lose almost 90% of what you heard. And you got to have it being repeated to you over and over and over again in order to retain more and more of the information. So if that's really God speaking to you, wouldn't that be a sign of respect to say, hey, I heard what you said. I'm going to write this down and remember. He always told his prophets to just write this down. And sometimes he didn't tell them to write it down. You know, sometimes that word is just for you and not for everybody else. But at the same time, man, this word is not less important than our jobs and our school and our everything else, man. You know, when he's sitting there giving me them words, I'm sitting there in the middle of watching a movie. I'm like, oh, I gotta go write this down. I gotta go write this down. I gotta write this down. And I'm sitting there clicking and typing. I'm just getting more and more revelation. And the reason why is because he know that we're gonna actually do something with what he's telling us. You know, there's no reason to sit back and hear the truth and not actually respond to it accordingly. You know, don't let it sit in your head. Don't even go to church and let the preacher preach and not actually take notes. It is a sign of respect to take notes. Dead serious. And I know sometimes we'll be caught up in a moment and things like that. And, you know, God understands that. You know, most of it is probably live streamed or broadcast somewhere anyway. You can still go back and hear it. You know what I mean? You can actually sit your phone down, hit voice recorder, leave it alone, and sit there and praise and worship and go back and listen to what was said. But at the same time, man, this word is too rich. Revelation from God is too rich. Why not retain that information and keep it for another day and another day and another day? And as you sitting there reading it more and more, he's adding more and more and more to it. And then he's like, go and tell them what I said. Go and preach that word. And don't care what anybody think. Don't even care if you look funny. And to an extent, man, sometimes we gotta actually be, you know, we gotta actually be a little, man, let me say this right. Sometimes we gotta be foolish enough to actually believe this. Like dead serious. Because when it's time to go and tell people what he said, a lot of people wouldn't receive you anyway. And if you always overcomplicating everything or undervaluing everything, it just really won't come out right, man. So when the preacher's preaching, when the teacher is teaching, write this on a scroll. When God is sitting there giving you revelation on his word and in the situations in your life and on the things that's happening in this world and on the things that's going on in your friends and family's life and things like that, take your time to write this on a scroll and don't hold back, man. Because when it's time to say it, it'll come out right. Just imagine if none of the prophets wrote down what God said. Just imagine if none of the apostles wrote down what God said. Just imagine if Solomon never took the time to write down what God said. We wouldn't even have this word today feeding our souls over and over and over again. So if that's really God speaking to you, I don't care if you sitting on a toilet. Take that phone out and write this on a scroll. Thank you. Write this down too.